Hi guys, welcome back to Slow Living. My name is Esther and I try to sew things that are... Wait, what's my tagline? I like to sew stuff. Wow, that's how long it's been. Oh, I've got it. My name is Esther and I like to sew stuff that supports a slow lifestyle. Things around sustainability and just living a more intentional life. In this video, I'm going to talk you through step by step how to take up tailored pants. This is a really great beginner stitch, I think. It's one of the first stitches that I learned how to do by hand because I remember back in the day, my friends and I, in high school, we really wanted to take up our winter skirts, and they're like a tailored skirt, sort of, like a wool skirt with pleats. Anyway, irrelevant. You basically couldn't like sew through it because you didn't want to see the stitches on the outside. So that's what I mean by doing a tailored pant or a skirt with this stitch. You can't just use your regular, like, you know, in and out, up and down. I don't know. You can't just use a basic running stitch. You need to use what we call a blind stitch. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to do that. Wow, that was just such a bad explanation of what I'm trying to say. Basically, any sort of garment which you want to shorten, but you don't want to be able to see the stitches on the outside. It looks like there's nothing on the outside, but on the inside, obviously, it's been stitched up so that the hem stays up. I don't know if that was a better explanation or not, but hopefully the video and the imagery will help you through what I'm trying to say. Let's get started.
The first step is to try on your pants or your skirt to see how much you need to take it up by. You can start by just folding it up to get a rough idea, and then when you're kind of sure of where you'd like it to be, then grab some pins and start to pin it roughly in place. Check the view from the front, the sides, and also the back, and then also try on any other shoes that you might like to wear with your pants or skirt to check that the length works for them as well, and also make sure that you're standing far enough back from the mirror so that you can get a nice full-length view. One of the reasons that you can barely see the thread on the blind stitch is because they use a very, very thin thread. Here you can see a comparison between the thread that they've used versus the thread that I'm about to use. So you can see there's already a huge difference in that. You can barely see the other thread. So that's going to make a difference. But because we're doing an at-home job and I'd rather you use a thread that you already have instead of having to go out and buy a new one, I feel like this is a very small payoff and you'll still be able to achieve a really nice look. I've got two pairs of pants that I need to do, so I'll start with the ones on the left. I'm going to measure how much I've folded them up, i.e. how much we're going to take them up by, and it was roughly 5 inches. I'm going to double check that measurement by measuring both sides of the pant leg to check that they're about the same measurement. Sometimes when you've tried them on and you've pinned them up while you're wearing them, you could actually get two different measurements, so take the average of both of those measurements. When you're happy with that final measurement, write it down somewhere so that you don't forget. I'm going to write down 5 inches. Next, I'm going to measure the original cuff. So the cuff that was already there before you've done anything to the pants. The ones on these pants was 1.5 inches. So I'm going to write that down again. And I can take out the pins because I know how much I need to take them up by. And I'm going to flip my pants inside out because I'm going to do the stitching on the inside. Next, we need to calculate how much excess fabric we're going to cut off. For me, I want to take up 5 inches in total, but I need to keep 1.5 inches for that cuff or that hem turn up. So that means 5 minus 1.5 leaves me with 3.5 inches that I'm going to trim off. Now, it's super important at this point to note that if you don't have access to a sewing machine, you're going to need to double your fold up measurement. So for example, my fold up measurement was 1.5 inches. If I didn't have a sewing machine, I'm going to double that and make it 3 inches. The reason for this is because if you don't have a sewing machine, you won't be able to finish off this raw edge like I have here. And that means that your fabric's just going to fray like crazy. So instead of that, you're simply going to fold over your fabric twice. It will look something like this, where that raw edge is hidden inside. It's also worth noting that if you're only taking up your pants or skirt a small amount, then you don't have to cut off any fabric. You can just fold it up, and then instead of needing to finish any raw edges or double folding, just keep it as it is, fold it up, and then skip ahead to the part where I do the stitching. If you do have a sewing machine or access to a sewing machine, then I'll show you how to finish off that raw edge later. I'm in the habit of using pins to mark where I need to cut. Otherwise, you can use chalk or a pen or something preferably that's going to come out in case you make a mistake, but just something to mark your measurement so that you know where to cut. I've left myself a tiny bit of room above my pins because obviously you can't cut on top of your pins, but if you're using other markings, of course, cut straight across where your measurement is. Now that it's cut, we're going to have a raw edge that needs to be finished off, otherwise it's just going to fray a lot. If you have a serger, just line up that raw edge with the edge of your serger and serge all the way around. If you don't have a serger but you have a regular sewing machine, it should have a zigzag stitch on it. I'm going to link a video that I did about zigzag stitches and how you can use that to encase your raw seam in the place of an overlocker or serger. Now that the edge won't fray, we can start to fold it up and sew it down. I'm going to fold mine up 1 inch because that's what I measured from the original hem. Yours might be slightly different, but generally pant hems are about 1 inch. Use a measuring tape and pins to accurately fold up your hem, and when you've pinned all the way around, use an iron to iron it down flat. Make sure that you use the appropriate setting on your iron. So a lot of tailored skirts and pants can be wool, and you definitely don't want to get too much steam or too much heat into that to damage the fabric. Now I'm going to use a separate piece of fabric to do the actual stitch so that I can show you in a contrasting thread. I'm going to secure my thread by tying a knot at the inseam, so not just at any random point around the leg. I'm going to pick this part where you can see there's a join in the fabric so it hides the knot better. I find it easiest just to sew in and out of the fabric and then manually tie a few knots instead of tying a knot in your thread, because I find that that can quite easily pull through. I usually tie 2 or 3 knots so that it won't come undone. Now this is the part that can get a little bit confusing, so pay attention. You're going to see my stitching is going to work towards the right, but my needle is actually pointing towards the left. This is going to make a lot more sense as I show you exactly how to do the stitch now. Our first stitch is going to be approximately 1 centimeter to the right of our knot, sitting just above where we've folded that hem. Don't be tempted to go any longer than 1 centimeter because your stitches will become far apart and much easier to break. And if your stitches break, of course, your hem's just going to fall down. I'm going to use my needle to catch the tiniest bit of fabric that sits just above my hem. You can see in this close-up, there's literally the tiniest bit of fabric that's gone through my needle. This part is the key to making it look like a blind stitch on the other side. So if you catch too much fabric, like I'm going to show you here, you'll actually be able to see it on the other side of your pant. So you're really aiming to catch the tiniest slither of fabric and then pulling the rest of your thread through. My next stitch is again 1 centimeter to the right of the last stitch, but this one's going to be 0.5 centimeter down, which goes onto the hem part of my pant. So this is going to catch the part of the fabric that I've folded up. Here you can see that I've aligned it to where I've serged that raw edge of my fabric. So I'm going to use that as a guide, but if you don't have that, simply aim for around 0.5 centimeter below that edge of your pants. Then you can pull that thread through, and our next stitch is again going to be 1 centimeter to the right, but this time it's going to be back up aligned with that raw edge where we did our first stitch. Alternating your stitches between that top edge of the pants and then 5 mil below will result in this neat little zigzag pattern. So if you're doing that, you'll know that your stitches are turning out right. And since we're picking up such tiny amounts of fabric, when you flip over your pants to the right way out, you shouldn't be able to see any thread at all. You'll discover that you can actually perform this stitch with the needle pointing in the same direction as the stitching. So for example, the needle would be pointing right and the stitches are traveling right. But because my needle is pointing left, it actually gives the stitching and the thread a little bit more strength, and it's less likely to break or come undone. Those first few stitches might take a little while to wrap your head around, but once you get into the groove of things, I think you'll get the hang of it. Continue doing these stitches all the way around your hem until you've reached your starting point, and then you can simply tie off your thread again with a few knots to make sure it's nice and secure. This is the finished result on my actual pants, so I used a matching thread, which definitely helps to hide the stitches as well, but it's mostly thanks to the technique and the stitch itself which results in such a nice, neat, invisible finish.
There we go. I hope that this video was helpful for you. I am very congested if you can't hear. We're going into winter here in Australia and everyone is getting sick, like everyone. And also my child goes to childcare. So they bring home all of the lovely sicknesses that the entire family then gets. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful, and if you had any ideas for what sorts of videos to do next, post them below and I will add them to my list. I will see you in another video soon. Bye.